Hi friends, this is Tina and welcome to my new video. Finally, this video is coming out. I know many of you have been waiting for this video since December, and after all those moments of lack of motivation for this video, I got the snowy winter painting tutorial up for you. Before we get into the actual tutorial, here's a picture of the finished painting, just in case you want to go ahead and sketch your painting before starting. I live for a good detailed sketch, so at least I always need it before going in with paints. In this tutorial, I will be talking a little less than normally. I will try to explain what I'm doing, but I don't want to fill this video with completely unrelated topics. This painting is done with gouache and I used a Mellow Days watercolor notebook, but of course you can use whatever notebook or paper you like. I didn't show all of my used products in this video, but all of them are of course listed in the description of this video, and I will also try to talk about the specific colors I used in each section of the painting process. I taped off the edges of the painting and took some Winsor and Newton masking fluid. In this painting, there's a huge spruce on the left side of the painting and a big tree trunk going across the right side of the painting. The scene is really snowy and the masking fluid preserves the white color of the page, so I applied it to the trees on the sides and had these big masking fluid blobs to create some snowy parts to the trees. I use silicone brushes to apply the masking fluid. It's almost impossible to get it out of your regular brushes, so silicone brushes are a good alternative. I also used the masking fluid on the small spruce tree on the right side and on the sun peeking behind the trees on the left side. After the masking part was done, I went to paint the background behind the trees. As I said before, I used gouache, and for the sky part of the background I used Winsor and Newton zinc white and Royal Talens light yellow, vermilion and magenta, and made this really light orange color. I ended up mixing a bit more of the yellow and red to the color to make a more vibrant look, but I think I could have gone with even more darker tone because when you paint the trees on top, the background might look even lighter in color, and to be honest, doesn't really show through even that much. I first applied the darker color to the top of the sky and created a gradient to a lighter color, adding white to the bottom part of the sky, and mixed the colors together in the middle. If your gradient doesn't turn out perfect, don't worry at all. You will be painting the trees on top and you won't be able to see much of what you just did. Next, I started working on the ground part of the painting. I just took the same color I used for the sky but mixed it a bit more yellow in. I painted the whole ground with that color, but I also added a bit of the white to the top. After I was done with the background, I took my pencil and sketched some patterns on the snow. Obviously, snow isn't just flat, so I sketched some areas where the shadows will hit, but I will come back to this ground later. I started working on the tree trunks. I just created many of these thinner but also a little bit thicker tree trunks in the back of the painting. I would recommend extending some of the trunks of the trees to start from the ground part of the painting like I'm doing here. If all of your trees just barely touch the horizon line, it will not look natural. It would look just like they are perfectly in a row. So make sure some of the trees are closer to you and some are farther. Obviously, if you look into a forest, the trees that are close to you appear bigger and the ones in the back are a lot smaller and thinner. So while you make the trees different sized, make sure to make the trees in the background thinner. I even used this really small liner detail brush to create these really imperfect and almost messy vertical lines in the background to represent some of the farthest trees in the background. When you add more, you won't need to be really precise and careful. By the way, I want to say I'm not a professional. I would say I'm a beginner myself, and I'm sure some of my techniques and color choices could be done better. But this is just me teaching you some of the things I've learned throughout the years. Wherever you place the sun, I think it's not a bad idea to make the trees close to the sun a little bit lighter in color, at least right around the sun. I don't think I did it here. There were actually quite many times I did something I maybe would have done different now looking back at it, but I think this turned out nice, so who cares about those super nitpicky things, am I right? I took my detail brush and started adding some evergreens and branches between the trees in the back. I wasn't sure what colors I should have used, so I first took a light greenish yellow color and then super dark gray. I decided to finish the tree trunks before finishing the branches so I could have some more extra time to think what I wanted to do with them. I took darker brown color and darkened the side of the tree that was farther away from the sun. So basically on the right side of the sun, I painted the right side of the trunks darker, and on the left I darkened the left side. I didn't touch all of the tiniest trees in the back and mostly focused on the larger ones. This is such a small details but makes a huge difference. At the same time, I used a brown paint to create these thin branches to the trees. I made the root of the branches wider, and I also darkened it a bit too. This is a crucial step in making your forest look more realistic and messy, so I would recommend just going for it with your small brush and creating these small lines on the upper part of the background. I could have done it more too, but I tried to just add more of the evergreen leaves. My most used color for them was this light grayish brown color, but I still added some darker and some lighter tones to the leaves as well, so they would actually look more like in a real forest. This is definitely your time to be unprecise and messy and go with the flow. Just make sure not to cover the whole sky part of the background. Leave some of that orange sky show through. By the way, if you end up painting this one, I would love to see your painting, so you can tag me on any social media post or send it to me on Instagram DMs. My Instagram is Tina's Diary, and you should definitely follow me there if you want to see any more paintings or bullet journal content. I'm also trying to post one painting tutorial in a month from now on to this YouTube channel, so definitely stick around if you're interested in those as well. I added more details to the tree trunks using a darker brown color. I know this step looks fairly easy, but it might be surprisingly hard to make these kind of freestyle tree details look natural. I would just recommend taking a relaxed grip of your brush and making those little dots and details as random as possible. If you start thinking about it too much or try to intentionally create certain shapes, it easily starts looking a bit weird. I'm also going to add some white gouache on top of the trees later, so not all of the details are important and they don't need to be perfect. I again tried to add more of those darker details on the sides of the trees that are farther away from the sun, just to keep that good contrast between the shadows and highlights. I took titanium white Winsor and Newton gouache and started adding some snow on the trees. I mainly added it on one side of the tree, especially on the opposite side to where I added the darker shadows. I did add it to the other side as well, but maybe a little less. It's good to get that snowy look, but if the whole painting ends up being white, it obviously loses some of those details recreated previously. As you can see, when you add that white, it starts to look even more messy than before, so don't worry about the details on the trees or the leaves too much, like I said before. I wanted to add more white to the bottom of the tree so it could blend to the snow better. I went over some of the spots again just because they turned out to be a bit too transparent when dry. Then we move to the snowy ground on the bottom of this painting, and this is where I kinda messed up. I was looking at a reference picture, but I ended up changing the side of the sun, and I didn't take that into account when I was creating the shadows on the snow. This would be easy to change by adding the sun on the right side instead of left, because then the shadows would be correct. Even though this is technically wrong, I personally don't mind that. I've been happy to let go of that perfectionistic outlook on my art, and I can now happily do mistakes without feeling super bad about it. Making mistakes is a crucial part of creating art and being an artist, so don't be scared to make mistakes in your own paintings as well. The parts of the snow that were in the light I left as yellow, but for the shadowy parts I added this bluish gray color. I have to say, painting snow with non-white color was nerve-wracking because I was sure it would look nothing like actual snow, but luckily it did. It's probably a bit hard to understand what I'm doing here and how I know where to add the darker highlights, but imagine there being different sized snowbanks, and behind the snowbanks, the area where the sun doesn't hit is where you should add the shadow. It's kinda hard to picture it since there isn't clear outlines or anything like that. I added some orange to the spots where the light hits, or where it should hit if the sun was on the other side. I made the bottom of some of those shadowy parts a little bit darker to accentuate the shadows. The orange color gives this painting more of a golden hour sunset look, and in my opinion makes the whole picture look completely different. It was hard to explain what I was doing and how I created the snow, but I hope seeing me go through the process helped. Trust me, I didn't know what I was doing half of the time either. I quickly removed the masking fluid from the smaller spruce in the background, and after that I started working on the trees in the forefront of the scene. For the tree colors, I mixed a little bit of Winsor and Newton olive green, raw umber, royal Talens magenta, and black to create this dark green or brown color. I mixed in quite a lot of water at first so the layers wouldn't be completely opaque and too dark. Later, I added darker details, especially below the snowy parts on the trees. Since I had added the masking fluid in the beginning, I just painted the rest of the white area with the greenish brown color without having to think about the shape of the tree anymore at this point. There's a tree trunk on the right side, and I pretty much just painted a straight line with the darker color to create this super simple snowy tree. I didn't add any branches or anything like that, so being able to just paint now without having to think about leaving some parts white for the snow was really easy. I added the same color to the small spruce in the background, adding it especially under the snow-covered branches. After I added the colors, I started peeling off the masking fluid from the bigger trees and sun. I would suggest being really careful when taking it out. I sometimes rub it off with my fingers, but then the color around them can easily smear to the white areas, especially when using gouache. I mainly use my nails to slowly peel it off, and it worked a lot better. I started working on the sun and I added this orange ring to the edge of the circle. I then took a little bit of water on my brush and softened the orange edges to create this gradient-like look. I then also took white gouache and added a tiny bit of that to the middle to preserve that light coming from it. I mixed some white and yellow gouache to create this light yellow color, and I used it to also paint some of the thin sun rays coming from the sun. I kept the color pretty watery to keep this more transparent look to them. I love how these warm toned sun rays looked like. Now that the masking fluid was removed, the snowy parts definitely looked very harsh and not realistic since the edges were smooth and even. I took the darker green brown again and added some messy color and details to the edges to create this more uneven and imperfect look to them. I also added some lines to separate the snow blobs, but I don't think in the end that turned out too good. I added some extra white parts with my white gouache and painted the right sides of the blobs with more yellow paint. I did the same to the right tree trunk, making the left side where the light hits yellow, adding some darker tones to the right side. At this point, I also took the orangey yellow paint and repainted some of the snow on the background trees with that, especially those that were close to the sun. And that's it for this tutorial. I just lastly removed the washi tape from the sides, and now I'm going to show you the finished product. I really hope you liked watching this video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and leave a wintry emoji in the comments down below if you're still here. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!